The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on November 28th, 2022, just after Thanksgiving, and we're very thankful to be talking about school choice today. And we also have a special guest, and I'll introduce her as we introduce the panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have Linda Lynn Cakadelis, and she is the executive director of the North Carolina Coalition for Charter Schools, and she's worn many hats in education in North Carolina. So we're thrilled to have her on the show today, and we're going to sort of hit a lot of topics that are related to school choice and such. So jumping right into the issues here. So we just had our elections, and Leon, maybe I could get the visual up, and it's funny because we had people elected who generally you would think of school choice as a Republican issue, but every now and then you find a rare bird in the Democrat Party who seems to be for school choice. And so I noticed that the governor of Colorado. Jared Polis. He is actually somebody who apparently has voiced support for school choice. And it seems like even in North Carolina, you guys had, let's see, it was a
Governor Cooper.
Yeah, Governor Cooper, and he actually wound up saying that kicking off, I guess, school choice week earlier in the year, which is kind of, I guess that sounded like that was kind of a first to have a Democrat pushing that.
Well, let me give you the background on that, because Governor Cooper does not support school choice. There was somebody new in his proclamation office, and they passed it. So somebody in the office got it through, but interesting enough, he never had it posted on his proclamation page. and so then they covered up by going, well, he is for charter schools, but he's not for opportunity scholarships and the other school choice programs we have in North Carolina.
So he's for controlled choice. He'll control your choices, and that's what.
And he always knows best.
Yeah.
Executive orders all the way down. Governor Cooper knows best.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that is a little bit of I guess a rare find if you are able to find Democrats who are for it, because they're so heavily tied to the teachers unions. So, and of course, the teachers unions tend to favor keeping these schools completely locked into the government. And so, yeah. So, so as far as things go, I mean, is this Linda Lynn? This is sort of your area. Is this sort of a common thing that you found, that it tends to be sort of one party that's much more for school choice than the other?
Right. Well, and it's interesting because when Clinton was president, in fact, at that time, he came down and spoke to our General Assembly, encouraging, embracing charter schools and asking for the legislation to be passed. That would never happen now. And I think, charter schools was a token to any kind of other school choice, to letting the money follow the child. And so we don't want vouchers. And that was at the time DC vouchers were coming up and all of that. We don't want vouchers, but maybe we'll go with charter schools. And the teachers unions kind of saw the handwriting on the wall that they couldn't be against everything at that time. And so charter schools were birthed. And 25 years later now, they're taking more students and more students and more students. And we're finding out here in North Carolina, we had, since 2019, we had almost a 20% increase in charter school enrollment here in the state, while the district schools are continuing to decline. And the last 5 years, even before COVID, we saw in Mecklenburg County, Wake County, our largest counties, that they were declining.
So do y'all go? I mean, I know your main focus is is North Carolina. But do you all have any connections on the national level? Do you all go to deal with organizations outside of North Carolina?
We work with the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. That is a C3. We are a C6, so we get more involved in elections. But we also, I'm on a phone call with charter school associations monthly, and so each state has their own charter school association.
Got you.
Yeah.
I wonder what I mean, I don't know if you know this, but how are charter schools in California? I mean, do you know what the numbers are like? I mean, I really don't hear very much about that here in our state, quite frankly. Do you know anything about it, by the way?
Well, I know the teachers union is very loud in California.
Oh yeah, we know that one.
Very, very loud. And so what they've done in California, and I can get the numbers for you while you guys have a discussion on something else, but the National Alliance would have that. But I do know California passed laws recently not to allow education management organizations any more management organized charter schools in the state. So that means like your National Heritage Academies, your Charter Schools USA, those kinds of organizations won't be able to start or be a vendor in California. You're seeing my husband behind me. He just walked in.
Yes, I've seen it.
Now, see, if this were California, that could just be somebody literally wandering through.
It was in another room, so we just what can I say?
As long as he doesn't steal more than $600.
Well, yeah. Tim, remember it's over $900. Let's not be stingy here.
Yes.
But yeah, so it is funny though, because you do see a lot of these Democrat politicians, the way they vote with their feet with kids is they seem like they all support school choice, because at least choice for their kids.
Well, I will have to tell you, when I was the executive director of the Charlotte Children's Scholarship Fund, which was preliminary to our Opportunity Scholarships, which came from the state. This was private money for low-income families to choose a school. I'll never forget a mom coming in right before the elections with a brochure for a candidate. And I knew that candidate did not support school choice. So I told that mom, I said, now, this candidate does not want you to have the freedom to pick a school for your child like what you've got right now. Oh, no, I'm sure he does. So anyway, short story here. We called the candidate's office. I had the mom ask the person that answered the phone if they were in favor of school choice. They said, oh, well, they're in favor of children. I said, that was not my question. Had the mom continue to ask the question until they said, no, he does not favor that. The mother hung up the phone, took the brochures that she handed me, and threw them in the garbage.
That's great. I guess there's hope.
There's hope, exactly.
Most families, especially in our minority communities, have no idea that the Democrat Party is trying to take away every bit of school choice, and they aren't aligned with the teachers union. And most of our minority and Hispanic families do not realize that until they're confronted with it. And I think that's why we're seeing the success in Florida is these families, especially your African-American moms, they have woken up. You want to talk about, the woke culture. Well, they woke up and found out that they do not want their educational freedom taken away.
Public education in general is truly a national disgrace. But when you look at what's going on in minority communities in America, Black and brown communities, it is beyond a national disgrace. It is totally disgusting and disgraceful. And this is the area where I think we can really make some inroads into this whole school choice movement. Because, Black and brown kids are really suffering from the education. This thing that they call in education in the inner cities, in the urban centers of America, this thing that we call in education, it is not. Many of these kids are graduating and they can barely read the diploma we are handing to them. And this cycle of poverty and and everything else that go on within some of these communities is just continuing because no one is educating the next generation. So this is the place where I think some of our resources could be focused in terms of getting school choice more widespread in the United States. I mean, I know it's more of a local issue, so we have to go state by state and all that. But I think this is a place where we could really focus some of our resources.
Well, Leon, you can't expect to hold anybody to the standard of actually being able to read their diploma. That would be racist, right?
Yeah, Jason. Just like it's racist to teach some of these kids math. It's racist.
Exactly. Well,
And
speaking of
expect them to
math,
get the right answer too.
well, speaking of math, and also, I guess reading scores, and maybe we could pull the visual up on this. This is something that who could have foreseen it? With lockdowns, and the one size fits all. They literally just shut the schools, continued to pay the teachers, and lo and behold, we find out, a few years later that it's like the kids lost a year or two worth of their growth in school across the country. And, it's just terrible. And I mean, it seems to me this is an area that screams school choice because, the idea of one size fits all. Well, maybe there was some teachers and students who would have wanted to brave going to school during the COVID pandemic. Maybe there were people who, this wasn't going to work for them, but one size fits all apparently didn't fit in almost anybody very well with respect to the lockdowns. Do you guys want to talk at all about these terrible results that we're getting from COVID and maybe how that might be driving people out of the public schools?
Linda, you can go ahead. Linda, go ahead.
Well, Jason, I think we're seeing what we call micro schools start up. At least that's what we saw in our state. Just families getting together when they couldn't go to school and start homeschooling or pod the schools, just micro, very, very, very small. Because parents know the importance of the reading of math, of wasting a year. You can't do that. Leon, just real quick, I did pull up as the beginning of the 21st, 22nd school year,
Yes.
2021, more than 1,300 charter schools existed in California, and there were 7 all charter districts operating in California.
Okay.
So the charter school movement is alive and well in California, but I believe if you look into it, it's being regulated to death. And that's the concerns. And that's why our organization autonomy is so important, that we don't have to do the same thing that a district school.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that kind of information. But the thing is about this issue that Jason is raising here is that out of COVID, I mean, our kids truly suffered. I mean, suffered a lot because of COVID, and will continue to suffer because of the lockdowns. But I think we can look at one reason, one good thing that came out of COVID. Maybe is to get more charter schools and to get more money following children out of COVID because of COVID. Because one of the things that happened is that most of these schools, these district schools, or as you call them, Linda Lynn, they put their teachers online with no training about teaching online. And some of them were just barely even functioning as teachers. And it really was a disaster. And we're seeing the results of that right now. So maybe the COVID might have done one good thing. The lockdown might have done one good thing, is to make parents aware of the disasters of public education throughout this country. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to have a real problem coming down the road, coming at us like a freight train running down the road that's going to run over us if we don't do something about the next generation in terms of their education. Hopefully, the lockdowns woke some of us up.
Well, I think one thing it certainly did is it took the mask off of the teachers' unions and what some of their motivations were. That it doesn't seem like, yes, they say they're for the children, as Linda sort of, mentioned an example of it. And it's not really, it's such an empty, statement to say when clearly For the Children would not have been just, without any thought, just sort of throwing away a year or two's worth of their education. And some of the stuff we saw during the lockdowns was a teachers union literally saying that they were not going to come back and teach unless they got things that were completely unrelated to the schools,
Exactly.
political priorities of the Democrat Party passed, like defunding the police. I just can't even imagine that is the standard that, hey, we're not going to, yeah, this is all for the children, but you know what? Until we get the police defunded, your kids can just,
Yeah, could rot in education hell. Yes.
yeah, but and it's funny too because maybe you could pull up back the visual, Leon. But this is resulting in a lot of people leaving the schools as we've been discussing, and apparently it's also leading to some white flight, I guess. As there's all of this politics is working its way into the schools, and it tends to be highly racialized discussion nowadays. I mean, when we talk about some of the CRT stuff and everything else, it's literally causing people to just say, well, if you're going to maybe tell my kid that he's a problem just because of his skin color, then maybe, maybe I'm just, going to quietly leave, look for the exits.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So yeah, so I mean, there's that. But thank goodness, I mean, like Leon said, because of some of the, excesses, the largesse of the teachers union during this strike, or during this COVID pandemic, we've actually seen some wins. In Arizona, they had some sort of landmark reforms passed where now the money follows the child in Arizona. So that's hopefully that can be a beacon to the rest of the country. So do you guys want to talk any more about you guys want to jump in on the COVID lockdowns and any of the effects that we've seen?
This thing about white flight, I want to talk about that just a little bit. The left always choose to see everything in terms of race. Is a black versus white, white versus Hispanic, black versus Hispanic, on all these sort of things. They always look for the racial angle. The truth of the matter is parents concerned about the education of their children, and nobody could see it. Well, the left, they cannot see that, because if a disproportionate number of whites do something, obviously it's done out of racism. And this thing is so disgusting, it's unbelievable. It does nothing to help educate our children when this is the issue that we're raising. They always want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, all this damn nonsense, but it does not educate our children. So we have to stop this nonsense that everything that a white person do is something done at the detriment of a black person. It is garbage. It is nonsense. It does nothing to help the next generation.
And Leon, I could agree with you more, but what I saw while I was on the Charlotte Mecklenburg of Education was not white flight, but I did see bright flight.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter the race. If the parent does not think their child, and it's not economic as much when you can have opportunity scholarships and you have scholarship money that can go to lower income families. It's bright flight that's leaving the system, which is scary.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of this is just because the standards are going out the windows. I mean, we've had here in California, because they don't like they're totally conscious about the demographic of the kids coming into the University of California system. And so they're just, as Leon said, looking for every way to put under a microscope your melanin levels as you're coming into these schools. And so that's the metric they're most concerned with. And so the SATs and scores that they've used as a metric to try and figure out if kids are ready for their university system, they've literally tossed them out here in California because they don't like the way the finish line looks. It seems like they're completely missing the point. If you don't like the way the finish line looks, do some work at the starting line to make sure kids are more able to lace those shoes up and cross the finish line. You don't completely reform the finish line just because you're upset about how the race was won. And this is really kind of insane. And what it's really showing is that we're all losing the race because of this government monopoly on public K through 12. It's just performing so poorly that, they're not really liking the outlook that they're getting from so many of these places. And just one more point on that too. They talk about this being a racial issue, with the SATs, and that's why they want to get rid of them. But who smashes these tests, especially in math? It's foreign students who are trying to apply to these schools. And who would be more culturally disadvantaged than somebody who's not even a native English speaker coming and taking these tests in order to get in it? And they're doing just fine on these tests. So it really bespeaks to our terrible performance in our government K through 12 schools.
If you follow the logic of the left, then really and truly Asian kids are really oppressing white kids. Okay, if you follow the logic of the left, I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that is going on here. It was George Bush. I'm talking about the second George Bush. It was George Bush who said, what we are seeing here in terms of Black and brown communities is this soft bigotry of low expectations, because the teachers unions and some of these education establishments are going into these communities with the mentality, of course, well, these kids cannot learn certain things, so of course we have to dumb down the education. But Jaime Escalante proved that was wrong. He went into East LA, some of the poorest communities that you could think about in the Los Angeles area, and taught calculus to these little kids. And
calculus in schools,
and most of them passed it with flying colors.
Calculus
but it's this bigotry of low expectation that is causing the problem. And this is why we have to change this, and we have to change it fast.
Well, Leon, I just want to jump in. Calculus in a school where they weren't even teaching calculus before because they didn't think the kids were capable of it.
Again, low expectations. Yes. Exactly.
And Leon, we have seen that in pockets across the United States. When you have high expectations, you have a good curriculum. Gertrude Williams in Baltimore wanted to use the Calvert curriculum, and the school system wouldn't let her. She had to use the regular curriculum, and she went to the school board and she said, they told her that was a rich man's curriculum. And she said, I've been using a poor man's curriculum. I want a rich man's curriculum. And she flipped the scores, and those kids, I visited the school back in the 90s. Unbelievable. Very poor, high crime area. The kids were succeeding.
Indeed. Yes.
Yeah. I think so much. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, I just said, yeah.
The epitome, which blows my mind, the epitome of racism is lowering the standards.
Yes. I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you.
And I was just going to say that it's more like not the kids being capable of learning. It's that the teachers are incapable or just don't want to work hard enough to be capable of teaching.
Well, in North Carolina, we have a pay schedule for teachers that you automatically get raises if you've taught another year, and maybe you go back to the schools of education and get another degree. Okay. Yes. You pay more money to get, and it's not tied at all to the purpose of education. It's not tied to the kids' performance at all. And the only way a good teacher can make more money is become a principal, and then you get them out of the classroom. Well, that makes no sense. You can have a manager manage the school, but your teachers, your quality teachers, you want them with the students. And we know who are quality teachers. It's not brain science there when you walk in a classroom and you see them having management control of the kids. And all of us have walked through schools and we've gone through different classrooms.
Indeed.
Well, this is a good transition to teacher pay and, how these incentives are set up in schools, because this is the problem, because it's all government run. And Leon, maybe I could get a visual on this one, but because it's all government run, then it's set up through the union such that almost everything is seniority based. So, like Linda Lynn was just saying, well, if you can show that you took a certain class, then you maybe get an extra bump or something like that. But it's not actually based on any metric of customer satisfaction at all,
Right.
which is
Right.
the parents and the kids and how they're performing in the long run. And so there's this thing we keep hearing the drumbeat from, especially from Democrats, that, well, teachers just don't make enough, and it's always sort of a sob story that we're hearing while they go on strike, and then the kids are left. I mean, we had something here in Sacramento that was, I thought, just appalling in the Sacramento City School Unified District. And it was on the tail end of the COVID lockdowns, where the teachers, after returning to school, decided that they weren't getting paid enough and were going to go on strike. This was on top of the kids being out of school, having just been, locked out of school for over a year. And
Yes.
they went on strike, and the kids wound up, I believe, being out for, about a week longer, after returning to school. And of course, they'll tell us it's all about the kids, but oftentimes these metrics aren't compared on an apples to apples basis. It's more of an apples to oranges, because they're often not factoring in the summer vacations that they have that are much
Right.
longer than other careers.
The cost of living in the different areas of the country is not even figured in. It's just
Yes.
everybody should make the same amount. It's never enough. And so I often ask the question, how much money does it take to educate a child? I mean, let's just get real clear here. How much money does it, what do you think? And I believe many people go, well, I don't know. Well, the answer is exactly what Rockefeller said about a rich person. How much money does it take to be a rich person? And the answer to that is a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, and certainly it seemed like in Seattle, a little bit more, 6 figures isn't even good enough. Right?
Exactly.
And this is, quite frankly, why we need school choice and why we need competition, because that will essentially really tie pay to customer satisfaction in the end.
Pay to performance, tied pay to performance. Yes.
Yeah.
I have to share with you, my son was in middle school. Now he's 38 years old now, but he was in middle school, and I picked him up from school, and he was so angry. Now get the whole picture. I'm on the board of education, right? I picked him up, and he was just every day was so angry. Well, finally, dinner time one night, it came out. Middle school. Now think about this. 12 years old, that age group. They were making the boys' PE class play soccer against the girls' PE class. But to make it fair, they were making the boys run backwards playing soccer.
Oh, God.
Now my son just didn't get this equity piece of this, that he had to run backwards. And I picked him up at school, and he was so angry. So we looked for another option. And I found what they called a cottage school. Now, this was a school that was located in a church, was not part of the church, but they used the facility during the week. Every teacher was self-employed and rented a room in the church building. And the one that we happened, I looked into it. My son was in a class with an African-American male that was a phenomenal teacher. Unbelievable teacher. He had 10 little boys in the morning and 10 little boys in the afternoon. And my son took an Iowa when we started, and an Iowa 2 years later, and he had progressed more than 3 years.
Wow.
He was behind when we started. He was excelling when we finished. Why? Because of that teacher. And the teacher we looked at his weaknesses, my son's weaknesses, and he taught to his weaknesses.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, I think we might have discussed it on a possibly a different show, but we all have different needs. I mean, this is the problem. It's not a one size fits all, but with a government system, it's inevitably going to be one size fits all, because I think,
Yeah, it will be for people who can't afford anything else.
Yeah, that's true.
And if we don't get the voucher program out the way it needs to be. But this teacher literally did what a beauty shop, when you go into a beauty shop, your beauticians rent their space.
Mm-hmm.
And they build up their clientele. Well, that's what this excellent teacher did. Rented a room, self-employed, and was able to teach.
Well, and this is part of the issue, right? When you allow things to be more privatized, you allow for innovation, which is, I think, one of the biggest things that's missing in this whole discussion is when you don't have competition, when you just say everybody gets paid by some metric of rules and metric of seniority, then
yes.
nobody has the incentive to buck the system. I mean, you brought up Jaime Escalante earlier, Leon, and he was punished for bringing success to East LA schools, bringing calculus to these young kids and changing kids' lives. I mean, in dramatic ways, because some of these kids that he taught wound up going to be, like aerospace engineers and other things when they were coming out of places where, had they just followed the government track, they'd be lucky to not wind up in prison, quite frankly. So, but he was punished. The teachers union literally picked him off because he was thinking outside the box. He wanted lots of changes that weren't in the union rules in order to do what he needed to do. And I remember he kind of finished up his career here in Sacramento, which is kind of interesting. He actually taught at Hiram Johnson High School here. So, maybe a little feather in their cap, I guess, although I'm not sure that I've heard rave reviews about Hiram Johnson lately. I don't know. But so anyways, but these incentives are just all wrong, and that's what the biggest issue with all of this.
But the bottom line is here. It is impossible for the education establishment and bureaucracy to care more for your child than you as a parent can. It is impossible. So they could only give you one size fit all. And that is a disaster, as we see that is ongoing in our public education today. That's all they can offer is one size fit all.
Well, and Leon, the district schools works well for some children. Sure. It does work well for some children, but it is like what you said, it's not meeting the needs of all children. Indeed. And when I was the executive director of the North Carolina Children's Scholarship Fund, that was a private scholarship program that we had in Charlotte before we passed the educational opportunity program here in North Carolina. And I tell people often, we scholarship 400 children, various education providers. I never had a parent call me that said, my child is reading so well. I love my teacher. The school is wonderful. Can I please have money to go someplace else?
Linda, while I agree with you that the district schools work for some kids, my problem is that too many kids are not being served by the district schools. Too many of them, even though there are some who do get the necessary service and education out of the district schools. We're having too many failures in the public schools, the public district schools, for us to allow this to continue as it is going on right now. That's my only point.
Right, and that's why, Leon, the money needs to follow the child.
There we go. That we could agree on with no problem.
Well, yes. Where their child is their needs are being met, the parents can pay their money to the district school.
Yes.
If that school's working for them. For my daughter in high school, we went to a large high school, and she was drum major of a band of 300 kids. Well, you're not really going to get 300 kids probably in a private school. But she learned so much being the drum major. Yeah. Didn't work with my son, worked with my daughter.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I almost think about it like, suppose your only two choices were, say, McDonald's and Burger King. It would be, and if you were just those were your controlled choices, and you had no other choices, it'd be hard to know what success looked like outside of McDonald's and Burger King.
Exactly.
So
I never know Taco Bell existed. I mean,
exactly. Or maybe even at a Morton Steakhouse or something else. I mean, the point is there might be a lot of different choices for a lot of different people.
And as I said before, bad restaurants go out of business.
Yes,
Whether they're a
yes,
Morton
yes.
Steakhouse or they're a McDonald's, they will go out of business because of their customer base. And therefore is the problem. Government schools, because money doesn't follow the child, the money follows the system, they can continue to exist even when they should be out of business.
Yeah.
No, in the government, in the government world of government running the restaurants, when we have a bad restaurant or somebody get food poisoning or that kind of stuff, the bad restaurant will be asking for more money to keep on providing the same bad food.
Right. Well, I think that's where Milton Friedman, in his classics writing about school choice, is you could have a rating system like restaurants
Yes.
do. And if it's,
Yes.
you get 50, who wants to go eat at that restaurant?
Well, I think the ultimate metric too is just for parents. It's you look at a school and where have the alumni gone? And if the alumni are all headed off to become doctors and lawyers, I think most parents would be kind of okay with that. But if all the alumni are winding up in the prison system, that's a real condemnation. But of course, there's no choice or metric. I don't, just terrible. But anyways, speaking of people being, I guess, shut down because of bad performance, let's get to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, where we'll take you to San Francisco. And in San Francisco, they actually had, during the pandemic, let me see here, so they actually had an issue where, oh gosh darn it, sorry about this, I'm just having to bring up the so they had an issue with their school board where they were just not interested in, it looks like, focusing on any of the academic issues of the students during that time period of the COVID lockdowns. They were literally focused on changing the name of the schools because they weren't woke enough. So you literally had a school board commissioner who was running around and changing names. Like, I think they pulled Abraham Lincoln's name off of a school because they thought he was too racist. And they even pulled Dianne Feinstein's name, who's a U.S. senator, because, hey, I guess she was popular in the past. She's been there over 50 years, I think, in the Senate or sometime like that. But apparently she's not woke enough today. So they wanted to pull her name off of a school. And that was their priority while the kids were suffering. And they were literally talking about merit being a racist thing. In fact, here's the quote that she had. And this goes back to a 2020 October 13th school board meeting where Allison Collins said, when we talk about meritocracy, and especially meritocracy based on standardized testing, those are racist systems, she said. You can't talk about social justice and then say you want to have a selective school that keeps certain kids out from the neighborhoods that you think are dangerous. And so I think she completely gets the idea upside down, that somehow you're trying to keep kids out from a certain neighborhood if you have a standard of excellence. The issue is go in and try and figure out how to help those kids run the race, not to sit there and upend the standards. And so they actually had a public school named Lowell. And it was apparently a merit-based that you used to be able to get into that, and they were considered, I guess, one of the highest-ranked schools in the country. And after this woman's standards of taking away these merit-based standards, it suddenly became a very uninspiring school. And I just, but there is some hope, and that's that they got rid of her at the end of this. People in San Francisco rose up and said, this is too much, and they voted them out. So there is something you can do. You can pay attention in your community. And so you guys want to jump in on this story? I just think it's...
But I mean, while it was good that they got rid of this woman, or I guess it was a woman, who knows these days? Maybe she'd identify as a woman. Who the hell knows? But while it is good, but the mentality haven't changed, though. This mentality is widespread throughout the state. Again, this whole thing about merit being racist, it gets back to this very same issue we raised before. Is this soft bigotry of low expectations? And this is what is going on, and we have to change this. We really do.
And Leon, it's the epitome of racism.
Yes.
To think
Yeah.
that a brown and black person cannot perform at high levels. I mean,
There you go.
without saying who was their teacher, kindergarten through 12th grade. What was the problem? Going back to Jason, what you said, we're looking at the finish line. What we need to look at the starting line and what's happening year after year after year.
Yeah.
And I will give you an example. When I was doing my student teaching in South Carolina, I always wanted to be a teacher. That was, I just couldn't wait to get in the classroom. And back then you did your student teaching your senior year. Why they waited till your senior year, I don't know. But anyway, senior in college, I was in rural South Carolina, and my first lesson plans, my first teaching a classroom was renaming, regrouping, carrying and borrowing in math. And I'll never forget, second grade classroom. And my goal, of course, was every child in that room was going to learn that concept, or my name's not Linda Cacadelas, man. They're going to learn this. And I had one little boy, he was a little black boy, was not getting the concept. I mean, I had done everything I'd known to do. He just was not getting it. I will never forget asking the teacher, what else do I need to do? Never forget. She looked at me and she said, oh, he's just going to grow up to be a garbage man anyway. Don't worry about it.
Jesus, Lord.
Yeah. And then that shows you when it's not tied to performance, right? I mean, if that person had an incentive, right, then it's not just like, oh, well, he'll be a garbage man. Well, then maybe your pay will be sort of garbage pay as a teacher as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Now think about her telling a student teacher that. Now, the good news is I didn't file a complaint. I didn't know what to do. I was shocked when she said it. And, being 20 years old, just starting out, I didn't know what to do. But I did know that child needed to know the concept. And I will tell you, before I left the classroom, that child learned the concept.
There you go. There you go. If I may tell a little personal story here, okay? I was 13, maybe 14 years old when I first learned calculus, okay? It was taught to me in a public school. This was in Trinidad. It was taught to me in a public school. But look at my skin color.
Right.
What did that have to do with me learning calculus? I could not possibly go home and tell my father, oh my dad, I can't learn calculus because I'm black. What my father would have done to me, you wouldn't like to know. But okay, I had to go to school. But the point is, though, there was no soft bigotry of low expectation going on. There was none of that. We had to learn, and we did. And it was not unique that I was learning calculus at 14 years old. That was not unique. That's very common for people in my era. I don't know if it have changed now, but it's very common in my era. And but now we have this soft bigotry ongoing that is destroying the next generation. And God help us, we got to change this. I can't say that enough.
You're right, Leon.
Leon, I didn't know they were so racist in Trinidad back then, trying to force calculus on you at age 14.
But James, I didn't realize it before. I could have been part of the oppression Olympics, man. Come on.
Well, but that was the point of Jaime Escalante too, is what he found is that they literally told him his students must be cheating because they were all Hispanic or mostly Hispanic students, and they were learning calculus, first generation in their families to do that in most cases. And the school system literally told them, hey, your scores are too high. You must be cheating.
I think they made some of the kids redo the test. If I'm not mistaken.
They made them redo the test, and they smashed it when they redid
Guys,
it.
the same thing happened to Thaddeus Lott in Houston, Texas. I mean, we can go around the country. Gertrude Williams in New Jersey. I mean, there are people that have said, let me educate these kids. I can do it. And we see it in charter schools all over the country.
Well, I think that's a good note to sort of transition out of the show. And do you want to tell us just a little bit about your organization again for anybody who hadn't seen it? And by the way, if you're interested as a listener in hearing more about North Carolina charter schools, we did another podcast with Lynn as well recently. And so check that out. And it goes into more detail about what North Carolina charter schools is doing.
Well, thank you, Jason. We are a member organization. We serve charter schools in North Carolina by keeping the stakeholders actively informed about legislative issues and advocating for equal charter funding and seeking autonomy of charter schools at both the statutory and regulatory levels. And we have about 80 schools now that we represent across the state, and we stay very active in the halls of the General Assembly.
Awesome. Leon, could you pull up the visual real quick too, so people can see the website before we leave? So, and that's nc.chartercoalition.org. So check that out online and find out more about them. So, well, thanks so much, Linda Lynn, for joining us today. I think we all learned a lot. And as far as for our other guests, thanks you for joining us as well, or for our audience rather. And we will see you at the next one. Until then, stay free.
Thank you, Linda Lynn. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Bye.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.